allows the district to increase to a higher bandwidth if needed. 3 years from now, perhaps we're going to have applications that will merit the 10 gig. Today, we don't have them yet. However, 5 years ago, when this was presented to you, a gig was fast, and nobody thought, well, we're never going to get more than a gig. Well, we're getting close to that point. Any questions?
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
It may not be the right thing to ask, but let me ask anyway. There's a lot of stuff in the news right now about this whole business of for instance, Comcast and the specter of net neutrality. Which does that play into this at all?
No, it does not.
In your view?
No, it does not.
Pardon?
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing that I neglected to mention, our new E-rate percentage of discount is 50% this year. Last year was a 43%. So this year we have increased our deduction for E-rate. So out of that price, we'll save about a couple of percentage points on that. We will need the contract if the committee feels that this is something that we want to move forward. I will have the contract on the hands of Mr. Cox tomorrow morning for his review, because the sooner we sign the contract, it should be signed, agreed in February, March, to give them the paperwork, because they got to build the network. We do not have to pay until July 1st.
Is that when our Comcast thing is over?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
Is everybody okay with this then? All right.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is to review the 2015-2016 Bucks County IU Program and Services and Instructional Materials and Research Services budget. Wow, that's a mouthful. Is that you, Kathy?
Actually, it's Mrs. Miller who's going to make some comments on this. And jump in, feel free to jump in. The 2015-16, I'm going to say it is a mouthful, programs and services and instructional materials and research services budget is $1.7 million. Pennridge's contribution is $83,000, which is a little bit over $100 less than the previous year. Page 36, you may refer to for more details. The budget is funded by state subsidies, direct contributions, and other local services. The district support is governed by a formula developed by the state and is based on the district's wealth. All funds are returned to the districts in the form of programs and services. Revenue from the districts is not used in support of the general administration, overhead support, or indirect costs of the organization. Dr. Glass was very proud of this. In the 15-16 budget, it showed another decrease of $18,000, or 1.05%. This is the 7th year the P&S budget has seen a decrease, while services continue to expand. An overall decrease over the 7 years is 15%, even with the PSER's raises in contribution, as they continue to rise. Details for ways in which the IU has controlled costs can be found on page 5. But in summary, costs have been controlled by personnel changes and searching for alternative revenue sources. Did you want to add anything else, Mrs. Johnson? Did you get answers to your question?
I did get answers to my questions, and one of those, I did ask the IU, are we using the services that we are paying for? And we are using a lot of their professional development services. So if you want any details on how much and how they're being used, I certainly can provide that. But again, I wanted to make sure that we are, what we're paying for, we are using in, we've had many teachers that have taken advantage of professional development at the IU.
Are there any other questions? Peter?
Just a comment. This is the one part of the IU's much larger budget that the individual districts approve directly. And as Mrs. Miller has noted, I think it is to be noted the fact that Dr. Galasso has been able to hold this budget steady, or actually really decrease it each and every year in the last 7. Dr. Galasso is retiring at the end of June. I think it's a large charge for his predecessor to keep that decline going. But I do believe, yes, we use these services, and it is something that obviously we are requested to approve, and I would certainly recommend that we do approve as we have in past years.
Okay, I guess that will be on the, which agenda? It's the 23rd. Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is to review Bucks County Intermediate IDEA Section 619, 2014, 2015 funds.
That would be me. This is something that we do approve annually. This is our early intervention services funds. What we are allocated dollars. These are federal dollars that come through PDE, through the IU to us. We must accept the funds, and then we must also provide to the state, to the IU, a budget on how we're going to use this funds. So that's kind of all one package. The amount is $5,577, and working with Dr. Phillips, those things will be used in special education and will be used for the purchase of various supplies and books for kindergarten students.
Any questions? Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is a nutritional services request to increase lunch prices.
Hello. Is that on? Okay.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so if you recall, in 2010 with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, the USDA has mandated every year that school districts perform what's called a paid meal equity to ensure sufficient funds are provided for meals that are served to paid students. So this year's calculator has a weighted average of our paid lunch prices that needs to be, well, next year's, 15-16, needs to be $2.70. And our weighted average is $2.59. So the tool is requiring an increase of 10 cents, which is the max of what can be raised each year according to the USDA and the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. But our recommendation is to raise prices by just a nickel in 15-16 and use non-federal funds to cover the other half of the increase. So currently the elementary school price is $2.30. The middle school and high school price is $2.80. So it would go up to $2.35 and $2.85. And just to give you a little background information of our surrounding districts and their current lunch prices for the 14-15 school year. Elementary lunch price at Palisades is $2.50, middle school and high school is $3. Quakertown Elementary is $2.35, middle school and high school is $3.10. North Penn is $2.80 and middle school and high school is $3.25. Solderton is $2.40 and middle school and high school is $3, and our VOTEC charges a $3 lunch price for the high school students. So even with a nickel increase in the 15-16 school year, we'll still be the lowest lunch prices in the area. Any questions?
Mrs. Giantera, I do have some questions. In terms of the non-federal funds, are you using fund balance that you've accrued in the program? Because obviously the nutritional services program is intended to be self-sufficient.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And when was the last lunch increase?
That was in 12, 13. So we didn't have an increase last year. We used all non-federal funds to do that. But at some point, we're going to have to start raising the prices to
No,
come
I
into
understand.
compliance.
My question really is, will this put us in a bind next year with this calculation that you have to do if you don't increase it to 10 cents? Because, as you say, the prices are similar. Competitive is the wrong word because they're local monopolies, but similar to other districts. And, you just have to make more change when you have lots of nickels floating around as opposed to dimes.
Right.
So my question would be, would it make more sense to raise it to 10 cents this year and then perhaps
And
not
then have
have to
an
do
off
next
year.
year? Or
And
not
that
have to
could
do
be
as much?
possible, because we would probably be looking at possibly another nickel next year, or if we do the 10 cents in 15, 16, then skip 16, 17, and then look again in 17, 18.
Thank you.
So are you suggesting otherwise, or are you just?
No, I am suggesting otherwise. I think since we didn't increase the prices last year, and as I say, since we're under the pressure of having a tool that we have to meet in some way, and it is a self-funding, and the prices aren't exceptionally high now. Certainly, if you go out into the community, you can't buy lunch for $2.85. So I think that it would be wise to raise the price. So yes, I'm suggesting the 10% or 10 cent increase this year.
I guess after hearing these other prices, that wouldn't bother me. I mean, I don't know how other board members feel, but.
Well, I think it's what Peter said. It's either increase it 10 cents this year or 5 cents 2 years in a row. So,
Or maybe more.
or even more, yeah. And we're still below everybody else.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
Sure. 10 cents a lunch, and we have 7,300 kids in this school district. Figure it out, it's 7,000 bucks. It's not a big issue. I can't imagine somebody griping about a 10-cent increase.
What does the administration feel? What
Right, we did talk, and we had this discussion, yesterday. Gina had met with her buying group, which is a buying group made up of Bucks County school districts, and that was one of the topics that they did discuss. Well, we can get away with 5 cents. We definitely would be coming back probably next year asking for another 5 cents, and maybe we just do ask for the 10, and then hopefully have another, skip a year. I mean, rather than having these increases every year. The food service department is using their fund balance to pay for equipment replacements, repairs, some renovations. And at some point, as we know with anything, when we use a fund balance to fund something, reality knocks at the door and says you have to pay before it. I think we would be happy with the 10-cent increase this year, and then again, hopefully next year not have to come back to the board. But again, this is being driven by the federal government that that full pay, what we consider full paid students, should not be subsidized by the federal government, because actually we're getting more money back from the federal government than what we're making the full paid student.
Mr. Surtees, I think we should just also point out too, we do have students on free and reduced lunch. So if families are struggling, they do have that option to fill out the application if they need help.
All right, well then my suggestion would be just up at the 10 cents.
I think we're good with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the final item, last but not least, is our budget review. And I don't know how you want to present this, Kathy?
Right, we actually have a number of presentations, so it probably makes sense for the board to go down and sit in the audience so they can see the presentations. Or you can sit up here and we'll do the presentations in front of you, whichever you would like. Mr. Loeffler actually is going to go first with his non-routine maintenance and his maintenance budget.
You do have the
You have the slides,
slides,
right,
so
so
if you want
it's
to
up
stay
to you,
here.
whatever.
Kathy, is there any way you could forward this information to me?
It's on SharePoint, Dave.
Dave, it's on SharePoint,
Okay, thanks, that's all I need.
and she says all of the presentations, so they should, I don't know whether they're in the correct order, but yes, they're on the SharePoint.
Okay, I'm on SharePoint now, and I'm the facilities and maintenance budget is just a bunch of pictures that I saw. But
Yes.
maybe I missed something.
Maybe that is it.
Maybe that's what it is. Mr. Loeffler is going to speak, so.
Okay, all right, I'm good.
Okay. Tonight I'm going to present both the non-routine budget and my 2600 operating budget. The non-routine budget is also what we used to call the $650,000 budget, or as Ms. Johnson refers to, the $650,000. I meet with the principals every year, sit down, talk to them to see what is needed in their schools that maybe other elementaries have or other middle schools have that they don't. Some of the popular items are obviously furniture, student desks, painting, floor tile replacement, carpet, walk-off mats. Last year we started some gym floor refinishing. It came out very nice, and whiteboards is an ongoing replacement. That is actually a teacher's chair. It's about 25 years old. There's many of them in that school, so we're going to be replacing them this year. And of course, West Rock Hill's gym floor. You know, some of us think of West Rock Hill being a new school, but it's 25 years old. And that floor's never been refinished, so you can see in the rate picture that it's starting to peel a little bit, a lot of the finish. And we did 2 of them last year, and they came out very nicely. So looking at the spreadsheet, again, I went out to every school and sat down, and this year, out of the $650,000, it looks like we have an estimated cost of about $307,000 for the schools. Some of the bigger projects are Bedminster. Bedminster has most classrooms and all hallways asbestos floor tile. And we've had some water infiltration over the years. In a couple of classrooms, they started to pop and loosen. So it's just time to take care of that school. So we're looking at doing half the school this summer and abate the tile and then retile the floors. And we're going to do half this summer, maybe half next summer. That's one of the bigger items on the whole list. Other items, walkie-talkies are popular again for security. Carpeting's a big one this year, again, furniture. One of the bigger ones for the operations department, or it's really for the high school, is to upgrade the security at the high school. Any questions on the non-routine budget?
Mr. Loeffler, West Rock Hill, when it was built 26 years ago, or opened 26 years ago, had a lot of problems with the roof leaking. Is that at all a contributor to this floor problem, or is that just a separate issue?
No, I'm sorry, the floor problem is at Bedminster. So that's where we're doing the abatement at.
No, I meant the hardwood floors. that
Oh, the
you're
hardwood floors, I'm
servicing.
sorry. There was some water infiltration in the hardwood floors many, many years ago. I think right when I came, we did a little repair. But other than that, it's not the cause of it now. And of course, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we put a new roof on that building, so we have a lifetime warranty on that building for shingled roofs.
Jeff, I had a question about Bedminster, just partly because it's in the area I live.
Yep.
Is that retiling that you talked about of $101,000 essentially?
No, it's more around 80,000, there's just other items in there that take us to
And is
100.
any of that because of asbestos contamination?
Yeah, it's asbestos floor tile, so it'll be abated by asbestos contractor and then retiled.
Thank you.
So that's going to be one of the items that in March I'll be asking to go out to bid with, along with my yearly items that I do go out to bid with. So in March I'll be coming to you with those items. All right, my operating budget. My operating budget is really quite a difficult budget. It has well over 100 account codes in it, and in each account code there's monies put inside for types of spending. District oil has an account code, gasoline, diesel for the vans, diesel for the trucks are a different account code. So there's many account codes and monies, and over the years we try to tweak these and move money around to make them proper. The mower there is what the board approved us to buy 2 years ago, and it's actually quite a machine. You can snow blow with it, cut grass, plow, it's got a couple attachments. We're getting 25 years out of these machines easily, and I will be asking to go out to bid on another one this year. So my overall budget, I was able to reduce by $11,400 this year. Ways we were able to do that. We shop for electric, we shop for our natural gas, we shop for oil to get the best pricing, and we do very well with that, and again this year we did. So I'll be able to reduce my electrical budget by $25,000, the natural gas by $72,000, and the heating oil by $48,000. Some of the increases that we don't have able to control as well is obviously property insurance, repairs and maintenance, and professional services. And those are really contracts like Johnson Controls, Simplex, say the two new chillers we put in at Penn Central and South. They're very large chillers that I hold a contract for them to maintain. So some of the new equipment, I get higher contracts or additional contracts too. We continue to do the best we can with our Energy Star. In 2011, we were 20% in reduction. And in 2012, some of our schools hit 30%, but we had to be a district-wide 30% to get that certificate. So we just missed it by a little bit, but 30% reduction on our utilities is a very large number. If you remember, 3 years ago, I believe we took about $800,000 out of the budget, and then 2 years ago, we took about $280,000 out for being able to reduce, our utilities, gas, oil, electric. And there's a simple graph of what has been done from 2009 to June of 2014, and you can see we're going in the right direction as far as saving. Electricity was up a little bit last year. I could contribute a little bit to that, to maybe the chillers. It's not weather corrected as Airmark used to do, weather corrected. This is straight consumption. Natural gas, again, we can see a nice downward fall. You see a nice drop again last year. The reason for that is the very cold winter we had last year. UGI dictates that if our temperatures drop below 17 degrees, that our dual fuel boilers, which are 5 schools, automatically switch over. They give us a great rate if in fact our dual fuel boilers switch over at 17 degrees, switch from gas to oil, and then when it rises back to 20 degrees, we go back to gas. So you can see we saved a lot of gas last year because there were almost weeks straight that we were below the 17 degrees. So we saved a lot on the gas, but unfortunately, you can see what it did to our oil. That oil is approximately 25,000 gallons more than the previous year. And we were paying $3.01 a gallon, so it's $75,000 what winter cost us for those 5 schools. So that's, so I said, it's a hard budget to work with when you have weather dictating things like that. Just real quick, an oil cost. In 2014, it was $3.01. This year, we're paying $2.90. We are tied in with the IU at $2.11 this year. That's a great price. Okay, that was on the short notice of the computer. If you take the cost from the last 2 years times my oil consumption, 85,000 gallons on an average, it's a $67,000 savings from the $2.90 price to the $2.11 price. So again, it's huge, you know. So weather does dictate my budget quite a bit, and so do the costs of our utilities. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jeff. Is there any other questions to Mr. Locke? Kathy or Jeff, how much, what percentage of the total is his budget that we were talking about tonight, do you know? Or is it just
A third.
Of a budget?
Yeah, the total budget. I know, like,
Let me look here.
okay, I was just curious, because I just.
I think it's about 30%.
A little.
35.
Actually, this will be part of my presentation that I'm going to go into, but the 2600 function code, which is majority of Mr. Loeffler's, that's a $10 million budget. So we're about 130, 10 million of his. So about what, 8%?
Less than 10%. Right.
8? Yeah, 8%.
Just to give you some, just to give board members a sense of what we're trying to do. We're going to go over the Kathy and I decided we're going to go over these types of expenses, which are the non-salary type expenses first in these meetings until we get more of a handle on our labor costs. So, and the salaries and budgets, I think, are about 70 or 71% of the whole budget. So just to give you some sense of size. Okay, Kathy, what's next then?
I believe it's my presentation, so give us 1 second so we can switch. I do apologize, it's going to take a minute to come back up. But again, this presentation is on your shared drive, so if you want to look at it. We're going to start talking a little bit because some of these things we can go through. We are on the exact same timeline for approving budgets as we were last year, down to the day. We approved our budget last year on this very same day, so.
Okay, I'm going to hold this so that I can move through this rather quickly while looking at the presentation. As I said, we're right here at the same place we were last year, February 12th, to adopt the preliminary budget. Again, any changes, we can make changes up until the date that we adopt this budget on June 22nd. So tonight, again, this budget, we still have we're still wide apart, revenues and expenditures, but again, we're going to be working on those things. One of the things that Mr. Loeffler said tonight, in this budget, I still have $650,000 in the budget for non-routine maintenance. Mr. Loeffler tonight is telling me he may need 307 of that. Once we go out to bid and we know what those final dollars are, we'll be reducing that budget by some number, whether it's, 360 or it's 345, whatever, but there will be changes to that budget. Again, just showing you where we're at in our timeline. We've done all the publications, we've done the notices. Tonight, again, adopting the preliminary budget. Part of the preliminary budget also includes the referendum exception for PUSers, and I will go through that. Again, as we did last year, we adopted the resolution to allow us to apply for the referendum exception. We do not have to use this. This is just a process that we can go through. And again, that will be up to the board if they determine to use that referendum exception, but it puts into place the advertising that we need to do for a week before we actually apply to the state for that. Okay, we are back here to where I was earlier in the year. This is the example showing a 1.9% increase in the real estate taxes. Right now, based on that percentage, and the current expenditures, we're at a $10 million difference between revenues and expenditures. Again, we know this is not the number that we're going to end up with in June, but this is where we're at now as we continue to work through with the other administrators and departments to see where we can reduce costs. Right now, in the budget that's in front of you this evening, I did show an increase greater than the Act 1 index of 1.9, which is 15.5. That's the rate of index we would need to balance our budgets with revenues and expenditures. We all know that's not possible. So we will have some work to do. Again, this is how we presented the budget last year. We showed that we were going to raise the taxes in excess of the index. We'll show that to the state. The state will send it back and say, you can't do that. We know that, but this is where we're at right now. Again, the governor will be coming out early March 3rd, I do believe, is when he's doing his announcement. So we'll see what Governor Wolf has for us, if there's any monies coming our way or is projected to come our way, or if we're just going to be at the hold harmless as we were last year, and that's what I budgeted. Again, the PDE 2028 object summary. We show salary and benefits making up almost 71% of our budget. We have professional purchase services at 5.14%, purchase property services, and these are things that pretty much are mostly Jeff's and some things out of transportation out of our maintenance department over there. Other purchase services will be things such as travel, reimbursements, some things along those natures. Supplies, 3.3% of our budget is made up of supplies, so we're not expending a lot of money on things that we're throwing away. Equipment, again, we have a small equipment budget, and again, some of those things are coming out of Mr. Loeffler's budget, as well as computer replacements, those types of things. Fees and interest, or fees and interest that we pay for our bonds. And then we have our principal payments, which makes up 7% of our budget. And then right now I still have the capital reserve, which is making up about 1% of our budget, which is where the $650,000 is currently residing. So we know that number is going to come down as well. And again, I just want to show you the picture of the percentages. And as you can see, that nice big blue blob there is our salaries and benefits. And again, that is the majority of our dollars. I wanted to show expenditures by function, and this will show you where we're spending the majority of our dollars. Again, direct instruction, this is the 1,000 for regular programs, 1,200 for special education programs. We have our vocational programs, and then we have other instructional programs in there, and that would be our alt ed programs. Almost 61% of our budget goes right back to direct instruction related, face-to-face with our kids. Support services, those are all the things, pupil personnel services, instructional staff, administration, that would be your principals and others. Pupil health, the business department, operations, which is Jeff and his folks, our transportation department, other support services, and support services. So again, 27% of our budget goes to those departments that support direct instruction. Then 1.3% of our budget is used for those things that we consider non-instructional services. That's our student activities, that's the athletics, that's other student activities at the high school that are funded, and other programs that are funded at the district level, and our community service program. We then go in and look at our 5,000 level series, which is 11% of our budget. This is our debt service and other transfers in and out of $1,350,000. That actually is those capital projects that I said. That number we know will be coming down as we move forward through these budget presentations. And again, wanted to show you that direct instruction does make up the majority of our expenditures, so that we are spending our money on our kids and that face-to-face instructions. Again, going back through fund balance, just bringing everyone up to date where we're at with our unassigned fund balance and committed fund balance. Again, this has not changed from the presentation that I gave back in January. Again, just a quick preview of the PSERS rates, showing you that the rates have been going up. They're going to continue to go up, but the rate of change is going to start to diminish. And our tax mill history, as you can see, over the years we have had, we've been going to index. 2 years we did not go to index. And then in 14-15 we did seek the referendum exception for PSERS that allowed us to add an additional 1.5% on top of the 2.1 Act 1 index, and we did take that last year. And this year we're right now at 1.9% with the Act 1 index. Things that we need to present for future considerations that I said that the boards need to make some changes, discussion on. Technology, again, we have been putting away, transferring $250,000 into capital projects to fund future infrastructure needs. Again, we want to make sure that we have monies available in the future for technology. Last year, we actually funded this through a commitment. We said if we had funds at the end of the year, that we would fund it through that, and that's how we did that. Non-routine maintenance tonight, Jeff did indicate that number is going to be lower. I apologize with my voice. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have $700,000 sitting in capital projects for the purchase of buses. So this is another one where we could perhaps say this year we're not going to put money in the general fund to buy buses. We're going to buy, if we decide we want to buy buses, we're going to buy them out of the monies that we already have set aside in capital projects. So again, if you think about that, if we don't do this $700,000 and we take $300,000 off our $650,000 project, we've already saved $1 million. So now instead of being a $10 million deficit, we're down to 9. But these are the types of things that we're going to chip away at over the next several months as we look at the budgets more carefully and make determinations with actual dollars when we do bids and so forth. So that is my brief preview of the budget and where we are this evening. Any questions from the board? Okay, then I guess the next thing that to have that conversation is the fact that you do have the PDE 2028 in front of you, which is what we'll be moving into when we go into the special board that we're going to be asking you to approve this evening. Again, I did want to point out that the preliminary budget does show a revenue of increase of 15.5%. And I think if you look at that one page, you can clearly see that it exceeds the Act 1 index. So just give me a minute to pull that up. That would be on page E1 if you're following along on the item that's on your SharePoint. It shows that I've increased the revenue for tax revenues by 15.5%, and it clearly shows that it's not less than or equal to the index. There's a big no that's been bolded by the state, and that our index is 1.9%. This allows us to move forward and apply for the referendum exception. Does not mean that we are going to take the referendum exception. The referendum exception this year for PESers would net us approximately $700,000. The calculation for the referendum exception is based on 11-12 wages, not wages that we're projecting to pay in 15-16, but 11-12 wages. So you take the 11-12 wages and you do a calculation upon which you say, well, the rate for the current year is thus and such. Therefore, you would get 50% of that back from the state. You then take that same calculation and say, okay, for 15-16, on the 11-12, the amount using the PESers rate would be X. Then you take the calculation and say, well, if you raise your taxes by 1.9%, that's the number. You subtract that number off the previous number that was calculated to bring you down to the $700,000. So, while last year I believe it was almost $1 million that we got with the referendum exception, again, it's dropping down now to about $700,000. Questions for me?
Okay, so just to recap, at the special board meeting, first of all, we're going to propose an approval of this preliminary budget. Now, obviously, none of us find this acceptable, but this starts the process just as we did last year. I think we started probably with the same amount of deficit last year. The second thing is to, and this is certainly up to board members' discretion, but whether we want to approve the application for the exception. I think I would support us at least. This time, as Kathy said, it's not a lot of money, but I think I would suggest that we approve that at least. I'm not in favor of hopefully using the exception, but it only means that we will apply for it. It doesn't mean we're using it. So if there's no other questions, then we can finish this meeting and move on to the special board meeting.
I do have a question. So what the $700,000, what is the tax increase that's associated with that?
You have the rate, I mean, are you talking like what, 1.9 plus whatever?
Right.
The PDE website does not do that calculation for me, so let me see if I can do that. Okay, I'm sorry.
She can just add it in while we're waiting. Any other questions? Okay, I guess then, I think that was the last item on the agenda, so now we can move to public comment. Larry's here in case of any public comment. So anybody who, if you want to move over, head up to the podium, we'll
Diane Herring, Hilltown Township. I have some questions related to the truck and trailer, or just some observations. And actually, I do have a question for Mrs. Schmidt, because she did bring up a very valid point. Some of my observations here were along the lines of going with one option versus two options. It isn't just the cost of the savings in transportation in terms of personnel. It also becomes the cost of maintenance that gets saved by using one instead of two vehicles. It becomes the cost of fuel, liability insurance, and everything else that can go into that factor. Along with that is, if that vehicle is then being used by other departments, I would think that some level of that allocation of cost should be tied to a different department. Not if you've budgeted for a certain amount of money and you're looking for another area, if you're tying that vehicle to other uses, there are other areas that you might have budgetary availability in different buckets if you're using that. In line with the question regarding parents, two comments. Is pay for play an option in this district? Is that something to be considered? A number of other districts in this area have gone to that extent to allow groups the capacity to grow and to offset costs. And obviously, given this evening's presentation, it becomes more cost prohibitive, I think. I, as a parent, as much as I would like my children to have more, I also cannot at the same turn try and say to someone who doesn't have children in the district, you should pay increased costs because my kids went extra 5 activities, whether it's football or cheerleading or band or whatever it is. I don't know where that discussion would come into play, if that's a potential. Can it be discussed for a specific group, or does it have to be district-wide? And along those lines of what Mrs. Schmidt was asking earlier about parents contributing, this is the conversation. Does that also allow parents to make a proposal to do something to what you're talking about with home and field, where there's a 10-year payback plan? If we're allowed to build a weight room and table that expense and lay it out and pay it back in 10 years based on fundraising, can the band do the same thing, make the same offer? If we're talking about $12,000 or $15,000, I mean, over the cost of 10 years, I mean, that's, $1,200, $1,300 a year. I'm pretty sure the parents can come up with some sort of plan for that to feasibly manage that. Writing a $12,000 check is a different thing, especially when we know we're faced with next year already receiving cuts in transportation expense. So the kids aren't going to be able to, they're going to have to compensate somewhere, some way. And so based on that conversation, being able to put all those numbers together, I mean, is those potential considerations that could be discussed? Just food for thought, because there's a lot of options, and, pay for play is not necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Thank you. Anyone else? Head on up.
Robert Linden, West Rock Hill Township, and I assume this is comments for the 2 meetings.
Yes, you're right.
Good. I remember last year when you tabled the discussion about the band truck. Twice, I think you tabled it twice. And here you come to the deadline, which you said was the deadline for making the decision. You have 3 proposals, and it seems that none of them are agreeable. Or at least you haven't even worked it out yet. You've had a whole year almost to work it out. And then you're sitting here discussing the cost of running a truck how much it's going to cost. Those details should have been discussed a long time ago. It should have been decided with Mr. Benson. You should have come here with the choice. I'm ashamed of you. Football field. I remember last year, you couldn't decide on what phase 2 was going to be consistent. You couldn't decide. They said, we'll go out and get bids, and then we'll look at the prices, and then we'll figure out what phase 2 is. So here you come to the deadline again. You say phase 2 is this price. We can't deduct anything besides a metal roof, which was never part of the original consideration. Then Mr. Tirado gives an explanation of a new network. That's great. I think it's great that you lower the price to get a higher bandwidth and such. But he said there was equipment involved, a purchase of equipment, and he didn't give that price. And then Mr. Tirado runs out. So I don't get an answer to that. And then my last comment is about the meager 10-cent increase in the price of food. It seems to me that since December, the price of food has gone up 25% in the grocery store. I was in Burger King the other night, and a family of 4, 2 little kids, mother and a father, their bill was $26 at Burger King. Good grief, a dime? I don't think you can find it, a big deal. Anyway, I think that's the end of my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Linden. Mr. Linden, if there's anything that you wanted from Mr. Tirado, email me and I'll see if I can get you the information.
I just think that the public should have been presented with that information.
Okay, Kathy said she can answer.
Right. We do not have the cost for additional equipment because we have not spent that time, because we're not at that place yet, and that place is probably not going to come for another 3 years. So when we get to the place where we think we're going to go to that higher bandwidth, Mr. Tirado or I will be bringing back what that cost of equipment. But the cost of equipment that we would be pricing today in 3 years will not be that same cost. So we're not moving this year in the budget to install that additional equipment. For the WAN that we're having this year, it's the same equipment that we currently have. There's no additional equipment being purchased this year. We're just moving providers from Comcast to Synesis. There's no equipment involved in that purchase for this year. So hopefully that clarifies that.
Okay, that answers my question. That was basically what I was asking, because his presentation said new equipment.
Is there anyone else for public comments?
Doug and Clarice Rohrman from Park Ridge Drive. Just a couple thoughts. It's late, so it's time to get home and get some rest, right? Secondly, I would urge you to consider something that's kind of counterintuitive in public teaching and public education, and that is to consider not comparing what other school districts are doing, paying, or spending. Now, I know professional athletes do that, and I know that, Hollywood stars do that to see what they think they're worth. But I think there's value for a school district like Pennridge to say, what is it that we need? What can we afford? And what's the point of comparing ourselves with Council Rock or North Penn, as long as we can do what Pennridge needs? And thirdly, on behalf of a lot of us who will be hit pretty hard by an increase in taxes, we would encourage you to consider not going around the exception. Thanks.
Sue Furlong, West Rock Hill Township. I would like to direct my questions to Mr. Sarnes right now. Did you ask Ms. Johnson to change the assumption from a $650,000 purchase of laptops to the lease cost in the presentation from last time to this time?
No, we didn't. We have not looked at all those things as we're going to go through them item by item.
So you left in the inflated cost of the laptop program?
Yes, nothing's changed.
Tonight.
Kathy. Nothing's changed since last.
All right, so then the inflated laptop prices are in there. I believe she had bus purchases in there, even though she said tonight that she has capital set aside, so that's another 700. There's a breakage amount that I'm going to estimate be 400,000 to 600,000 that you chose to leave in, and probably some other things that you know about. And rather than present what I would call honest numbers, we have stayed with these inflated numbers. Is that correct?
I'm not saying they're inflated. We haven't gone through the budget yet,
So you're just saying that you haven't made any effort then to scrub those numbers from the last presentation to this number to get to a better number?
I just have to say, you know, and Mr. Sarnes, you can answer that question. Obviously.
I'm not talking to you. These are just straightforward
just
questions. They're not legal. They're not legal, and I don't need your input.
You're out of order.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm
Ask your
directing
question.
financial
Now you can
questions
answer it.
to the chair of the finance committee.
I was courteous
And they're just
enough
yes
to
or
allow
no
you to speak, and I just
questions.
asked you for the same courtesy back.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, I said I was courteous enough to allow you to finish your comment and your question. I'd ask you to extend the same courtesy to me. Now,
I didn't ask
Mr.
you any
Sarnes-
questions.
Mr. Sarnes can answer that question if he wants, but having sat here for most of the night and at a number of these meetings before, I'll say again what I've said before, which is I don't see the value in board members trying to answer questions from the public, where the point of the question is not to elicit information, but simply to make a point and to essentially cross-examine a board member on an issue where the speaker is trying to make a point. Now, it would be different, in my view, if the speaker was asking the question where they were truly trying to elicit information. But my experience has been that frequently, the point of the question is to embarrass or to sort of harangue the board member. Now, I just wanted to put that out there because maybe it will
Okay, I'm going to clarify my question.
Maybe it will change the tone a bit and change the nature of the questions. Maybe it won't.
No.
And it's not my point to try to stifle conversation, believe me. But I just wanted to make that observation because
Okay, my questions were very specific.
I've seen it a number of times.
My questions were very specific, and it has to do so that when I look at those numbers that were presented to me tonight, I can understand what has changed from the last meeting to this meeting. And these are items that I specifically brought up and pointed out, and I think I have every reasonable expectation to know, were there any adjustments along those lines? I don't see anything adversarial about it. It's a clarification so that we know what are in those numbers. And I find that there has been no improvement in the accuracy of the numbers. So that's what I wanted to find out. Thank you.
All right, if there's no other comment, then this meeting's adjourned and we'll move into the special board meeting.